What's up, Internet? As I speak, 2019 is drawing to a close. A few hours from now, it will be over. I think it's important that we take a look back and figure out exactly what the high points of this year were, with, as you can expect, my top 10 games of 2019. Now, as you know, I don't always play the newest games, so this is really just going to be a list of the best games I played this year, which I think actually makes it better. I'm not confined to the year they were released, but really just how good they were. These are the absolute best of the best. Now, before we kick off with the proper list, I have to recognize two honorable mentions. Honorable mention number 1, Fast Striker. A PS4 remake of a Dreamcast homebrew game that I missed 10 years ago, and I absolutely love it. Tons of secrets in this game. Tons of opportunity to try and increase your score. There's a lot of strategy to this. This is a very complex shooter, and it is an absolute blast. Also, really kickin' soundtrack, and I'm not normally into, like, techno synth nonsense. Here it was actually really wildly good, and I quite enjoyed it. The other honorable mention I would like to give, Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. Holy shit, someone out there created something that made me give a shit about Dragon Ball Z. And all it took was combining the elements of Gundam Breaker. Take your favorite Dragon Ball moves, take your favorite Dragon Ball costumes, mix them together, make your ultimate Dragon Ball warrior, and off you go experience the story, but with your character kind of inserted but mostly ignored. Also, while we're on the subject of this game, Frieza's race now officially has a name. They are now officially called Popsicles because I said so, and mine is the greatest popsicle of all. He loves killing Goku, eating chicken nuggets, and killing things with death lasers, because popsicles. Anyway, let's move on to the first of our list. Number 10, we have Game Tengoku, a PS4 re-release of a PS1 Saturn arcade game. This is a shooter that really likes to celebrate retro gaming. And granted, pretty much every indie game in existence at this point does it, to the point where it's oversaturated and really, really boring. But this game does something different. Not only does this game look like an 8, 16-bit, whatever have you era, this game actually honors and fondly remembers pretty much every aspect of the games industry. It recognizes used game sales, RPGs, mahjong dating sims, karaoke. It has levels dedicated to pinball, game centers, crane games, really deluxe arcade cabinets. This game wants to actively recognize and celebrate every aspect of the games industry, along with some of the most likable villains you could ever find in a shooter. Game Tengoku is a game that I think is absolutely masterful. The only thing about it that I don't necessarily like is, if you're into shmups for the difficulty, this one's not going to be that hard. Granted, I'm playing on the easiest version because I'm not that good, but it is not the most complex or difficult shooter of all time. And, I don't know, if you're not a fan of Jaleco stuff, this is probably going to be less interesting to you because there's a lot of Jaleco callbacks in this game. But, seriously, it is just such an awesome shooter that is basically just a love letter to gaming as a whole. And playing this now, just recording footage for it, I just couldn't happen to help but have a giant smile on my face playing because it was just such a beautiful and pure thing. I quite loved Game Tengoku. Number 9 harkens back a little bit to my childhood, and I have to give a thank you to someone who wished to remain anonymous. We have Pokemon Snap, probably the most interesting Pokemon game on the N64, and that is a system that has like 6 Pokemon games on it. Pokemon Snap is a rail shooter, but instead of shooting things with guns, you use cameras, and occasionally throw toxic gas balls at monsters to really make them angry. You know, because environmental friendliness. You take photos of Pokemon, you try and catch them interacting in interesting ways, you try and convince them through bribery with food, or again threatening with poison gas balls to try and get them to interact in interesting ways, and then you try and capture it. You have to try and solve the mysteries of the world to find the ultimate prey and try and capture it on film so that you become the greatest Pokemon photographer of all time. It's a short game, and it's a little bit weird in some spots. I know that this game did cut the Pokedex in half before it was cool, and, you know, in that regard, it could have been a lot longer, and seriously, we need sequels to this so we can get a fuller Pokedex of Pokemon to take photos of. But it still stands as one of the most memorable and interesting iterations of Pokemon out there. And certainly one of the most truly Nintendo-style N64 games out there. It doesn't care what everyone else is doing. It's doing its own thing, and it's just happy with it. And you gotta respect that. Fact is, Pokemon Snap is a wonderful, tremendous game, and it's something truly unique. If you haven't experienced this one, go give it a shot, because it's great. Number 8. You knew that if I had to play one of these games, it was going to be on this list. We have EDF 5, shooting giant bugs from space once again. What can you say about this game? You pick one of your 4 different soldiers, which all play differently. Again, I like to play the flying ones, because flying in EDF games is basically the greatest thing ever. And then you have to basically just kill aliens, pick up new weapons, and try and find the most fun, wacky, zany, different weapons to survive this alien apocalypse. It is tremendously fun. It is tremendously grim, given, like, the giant splatters of, like, purple alien blood everywhere. And it has some of the goofiest, cheesiest B-movie voice acting ever. Like, seriously, the script writing, the voice acting, it all came together to give you a fantastic presentation. And it's just some of the most pure, fun gaming experience you could ever have. This is a very video gamey video game. You pick up floating boxes to increase your stats. They are not trying to go for realism, they're trying to go for fun, and that's tremendous. Only thing I don't like about this game, though, is it has its roots in budget games. And it looks like it has its roots in budget games, which is fine. It totally embraces that, and I respect it for it. However, this game does not have a budget price, and as far as I can tell, it's the only game in the series where that is the case. And that's a little bit harder to swallow. Fortunately, when I picked it up, it was on sale, and I got it as a treat for myself because I played something else that made me very, very sad. So, this was a nice little pick-me-up, and I can see investing a lot more time in this, as well as the rest of the series, because EDF is just an amazing gaming experience. Provided you're not taking it too seriously. Anyway. Number 7 on this fantastical list of awesome things I've experienced this year can be attributed to my girlfriend, and that will not be the last time I will have to say that here today. We have Crimson Tears on the PS2, a dungeon crawler by Capcom, by way of, like, Streets of Rage combined with the aesthetics of Wind Waker, and a plot that's kind of vaguely similar to, say, Ghost in the Shell. And literally everything I just said sounded like the coolest thing ever to me. Basically, you've got this really nice, really beautiful, bright, colorful, cel-shaded look as you take your characters into these randomized dungeons and just beat the ever-living stuffing out of mutants, monsters, robots, what have you, all in order to try and build up your stats, get better weapons, and just become a better combat android, basically. This game is definitely one of those randomized dungeon crawlers, which is definitely a niche area. But I think this one takes the concepts of randomized dungeon crawling to a new level in its own rights. For one thing, if your character gets knocked down in combat, it's not game over. You actually have 3 playable characters, and if you lose one in the dungeon, you can send one of your others to go revive them. Unfortunately, I think that this is kind of a misstep, because I think if you send a new character in, the dungeon shouldn't randomize itself again. You should have to go through the dungeon again as it was and try and remember all the traps you avoided firsthand, as opposed to just expecting it to be completely fresh. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but that's just a small nitpick. This game also features a really neat concept of status afflictions you afflict to yourself in order to boost your stats in certain regards. As a robot, you are prone to overheating if you use your specials too much. If you overheat, you can sit around or use an item to wait for it to cool down, or you can keep going, and if you do, your defense basically drops to 0, making you basically instantly killable by everything. But, on the flippity-flop, you can also kill basically everything in one hit. Oh yeah, and this is a game where once you kill your enemy, you can continue to beat the ever-living shit out of them while they're on the floor for tons of bonus experience. That needs to be in every single game ever. Seriously, can we just add that? Can we have that in Tetris? That would make Tetris way cooler. Seriously, awesome, awesome mechanic, needs to be in more stuff. Continuing the theme of my girlfriend's awesome taste, we have Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube. They found a way to make me care about 3D fighting games, and all they had to do was turn it into an adventure RPG and add Link. Who knew? Yeah, this is a really interesting game because sure there's a one-on-one fighting mode, but there's also like a weapon master mode, which plays like an RPG with different events unfolding, and as you challenge each event, you get different challenges. Such as, in one area there might be heavy winds, so you have to watch getting knocked off the platforms. Or you have no health, so you basically have to play perfectly. Or your opponent's invisible, or you're like magnetically attracted to each other. There are so many different unique concepts all thrown at you one after the other, after the other, after the other. And you do it while dungeon crawling and finding new equipment and buying new outfits and doing all sorts of crazy awesome stuff. This game is way more deep and way more interesting than it has any right to be. It's awesome, and I love this game. This is probably one of the most fun fighting games I've played this year, and I've played a couple really fun fighting games this year. Way to go, Soul Calibur 2. I have to applaud you. You are something very special. Moving on to number 5, yet another game I received from my girlfriend. We have Shadow Hearts to the New World, the third game in the Shadow Hearts series, except it's the fourth one. The first one wasn't actually named Shadow Hearts, but you're in America this time as opposed to Europe. The plot is a little strange and goofy, but I mean that's to be expected from Shadow Hearts. I love that every single character, like previous games, has like their own special abilities and has different ways to expand their abilities. The Judgment Ring system, which acts, I guess the closest approximation to this system I could tell you is like Paper Mario, where you have to time special button presses to get boosts to your attack. But you can customize it as much as you want. You can get it so that it does it entirely automatically for you, at the cost of pretty much any special abilities you can get from using it. You can get it so that your trigger range for this ability is so small, but you get huge boosts from it. You can get it so that instead of multiple triggers, you only have one, and if you get it, you really get it. Or you could set it up so that if you miss one prompt, your entire attack is cancelled. There is tons of risk-reward with this system, and it is tremendous. Combine that with interesting, very interesting characters, special abilities out the wazoo, some very cool world design. I love this game. The one thing about this I don't care so much for, though, is it does feel a little bit, I don't know, touristy. There's lots of moments where it feels like you're going to places just to go to places, rather than actually having purpose behind why you're going there. Like, seriously, early on you go to the Grand Canyon just 'cause, really. It's weird, but you know what? This is a tremendous game. The only other thing I could maybe say negatively against it is, as the final game in the Shadow Hearts series, it is a little bit unfortunate. It feels weaker than the second iteration, but you know, Shadow Hearts is still like the best PS2 RPGs outside of like Persona or one or two of the strategy RPGs NIS made. I love Shadow Hearts, and I'm really hoping I collect the other two in the series because, well, the two I had made my Game of the Year list, and they were both tremendous games. I can only wait with bated breath to play the others. Game of the Year number 4 was a game I had to wait very patiently for. My girlfriend got this to me as a gift, and I had to very patiently wait for it, but I was so excited to play. This is the Twisted Tales of Spike McFang, probably the most obscure Super Nintendo North American release out there. This is a bit of a weird game. It's a ton of fun with some of the goofiest plot you'll ever run into on the Super Nintendo, this side of Erathbound. And, you know, you play a vampire magician who fights cloves of garlic and decides not to help people immediately just because he doesn't want to lose the deposit on his fighting camp. I am so excited and raving about talking about this because it's such a goofy time that I'm actually losing the ability to speak as I say it. The only thing about this game that is a negative, and there is, and apparently this has to do with the localization, is when they translate to North America, they went in on the back end and messed with the numbers, so like all the enemies have twice the stats what they do in Japanese. which explains why all the bosses are ridiculous difficulty spikes, even when you over-level them. Yeah, some of the bosses here are ridiculously tough, and it feels like you need to spam like single-use items you have to hoard at the beginning of the game. It's not a perfect game, but it is one of the most memorable, and it has some of the most interesting presentation you will ever find on the Super Nintendo. I love this game, and I am so glad I finally got to play it. I have been waiting to play this game for years, and it's just such a hard-to-find game, but man is it worth it. Provided you can get past the difficulty spikes, this game is a must-own for any Super Nintendo fan. But we're not done with the Super Nintendo quite yet. Moving on to number 3, we have Lufia and the Fortress of Doom. This was a game I have wanted to play for a very long time. I make no bones about it. I want to play every Super Nintendo RPG out there, and Lufia was very high on my list. And now I finally have it. And, well, I suppose the cynic in me could basically just say it's a very, very simple RPG. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's just a little simple. And the presentation's not that great. I think some perspective is important. When this game came out in North America, like, the only other RPG on the market for the system was Final Fantasy IV. And that was it. And this game, as much as I love Final Fantasy IV, this game blows that out of the water in presentation alone. The characters are well written, they're interesting, the world and enemies are great. I just love Lufia, and I am super excited to someday play the sequel to this, because I hear that one is even better. In fact, I hear that it kind of completely invalidates owning this one, because the second one is just totally blows this one out of the water. I am just so happy to finally have been able to play Lufia, because this one's been on my list for a while, and it was a blast of an RPG, and I'm still not done yet, full disclosure, but it's been something I've been playing in my 1 or 2 free moments, and I'm still having a blast with it. Speaking of games I'm having a blast with, let's move on to number 2. We have a new game. Well, new, it's current gen anyway. We have Yakuza 0. I have heard so many good things about the Yakuza series, and I've never had the ability to play them. I decided to, once I saw this on sale, grab it and jump in, and holy crap, this series is awesome. Pretty much once I started playing it, I put all the other ones on the series on my wish list, because goddamn, this game is fun. First and foremost, what hit me is, this is basically a new version of Shenmue, except more combat, more stuff to do, and a little bit better paced. For another thing, this is basically a new Streets of Rage. This is a 3D beat-em-up that actually works, that isn't a Rising Zan clone. This is actually like a proper old-school beat-em-up with stuff you can pick up off the ground and just beat people to death with. You can find many a weapon in this game. You can ultimately learn all these different fighting styles, unlock a couple fighting styles, develop the fighting styles you have, and it's just a really zany, goofy experience with the awesome veneer of the 80s. It totally just loves the 80s consumerism of this game. And man, it's just fun. But what's even more interesting, and what really made me decide I had to put this on my Game of the Year list, especially back when I played this like right at the start of the year, I was at like chapter 3 in the game, a point where you could probably be 3 or 4 hours into the game. I think I sunk something like 60 hours in at that point. I was just having so much fun doing all of the side activities, and seriously, I have to review this game some point soon to just go into this fully, but, you know, running around as Kiryu, or my boy Majima, who needs more games, by the way. Majima is like the greatest character ever. You know, there was so much to do, and I ran into this weird, surreal moment where after several hours I had to stop and realize, oh yeah, this is a game where I run around beating people up. I just totally spaced on that. I was having too much fun playing Sega arcade games, or going bowling, or playing darts, or fishing, or dancing, or, you know, singing karaoke. There's so much to do in this game, despite the fact it's such a small open world. Yakuza 0 is a special game in that it gives me something to point at the PS4 that says, you need to own one of these because of this game. And I have trouble picking out a couple of the games that are absolute must-haves. There are some good ones, but absolute must-haves are few and far between. Yakuza 0, that's a must-have. That's why you need a PS4. But of course, we're not done with this list just yet. We still have to move on to number 1. This was a game my brother got me for my birthday. This is Dual Hearts on the PS2. This is a game that I kind of have a little bit of trouble explaining. This would sort of be like mixing the sort of world aesthetics of Skies of Arcadia with the dungeon ideas of, say, Legend of Zelda, with the overall concept of Psychonauts. And that should sound like the greatest thing ever, because it kind of is. Basically, you play an awesome treasure hunter jumping into people's dreams, going through dream dungeons, and going through like the crazy twisted mazes of dreams, fighting monsters, collecting things, to ultimately become like the greatest treasure hunter of all time. There's not a lot about this game I can complain about. It was a game I had waited for a very long time about. It was definitely one of my more wanted PS2 games, and it was absolutely worth the wait. Dual Hearts is a tremendous adventure game that I think should grace any adventure lover's PS2 library, because seriously, Dual Hearts is just amazing. This is a game that I'm not sure I can, right now, after having spoken for about 20 minutes straight here, do justice with words. It is just such an interesting and unique experience for the PS2. I don't think I've ever played a game quite that similar. Again, Psychonauts would be kind of the closest with the sort of mind-jumping stuff, but, you know, this is something wholly unique, wholly its own, and something I think everyone needs to get a hold of. And that is my game of the year. And I think it was honestly a very tremendous one. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed and you have a fantastic rest of whatever 2019 will be left when I put this up. Probably not much, I apologize. Hope you have a tremendous start of the next year, and I hope you've played some tremendous games over this past year, because I want to hear about them. I can hardly play every game that comes out this year. I mean, hell, the Switch had 2 games I was missing that I really wanted to play. PS4 and Xbox One had like 3 I really wanted to play that I missed out on. I want to hear about all the awesome games you played this year, because I need to work up my list for next year when I get some money. And I hope you enjoyed. If you did, you know, subscribe to the channel so that I can continue to do what I do to the best of my ability, as well as support the channel through its Patreon or PayPal so that I can, you know, afford to, because buying games is expensive, especially when you don't have a ton of money. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Peace out, Internet.